Thank you everyone for joining us today. Before we proceed further, on behalf of the Legacies family, I'd like to extend our gratitude to Bombay Stock Exchange for co-hosting this event with us. I'd also like to thank our event partners, Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Elephant, HDFC, Lex Witness, and Victorinox. Now, our next session for today is for the launch of the Legacies Compliance Solution for SMEs. Our panelists for this session are Shri Ashish Chauhan, Mr. Nehal Vora, Mr. Girish Joshi, and Mr. Ajay Thakur. Without further ado, I hand over the platform to Untitled Chapter.
Thank you so much, Risha. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives us immense joy to welcome you today. We at Legacies are on the cutting edge of legal technology solutions focused towards helping businesses. And today is one such occasion where we unveil our latest offering, specifically for the MSMEs. As I will be in some time showing you the presentation which sort of takes you through it, SMEs are the powerhouse of any economy, and we recognize the astronomical potential in the Indian SME sector. The Comply Global SME platform allows SMEs to manage all their compliances on a single intelligent platform, which is powered by AI, without having to worry about the compliance levels and thereby unlocking their true value and potential. A compliant business is geared for success, and it opens up global opportunities and the ability to partner with the larger ecosystem in general. Today we have with us Shri Ashish Kumar Chauhan. He is the MD and CEO of Bombay Stock Exchange, Asia's oldest exchange, the world's fastest exchange with a response time of 6 microseconds, the world's largest exchange with 5,000 plus listed companies, and India's first universal exchange to offer trading across all asset classes. He is credited with reviving BSE and completing its IPO, which was oversubscribed by more than 51 times. He was instrumental in setting up India's first international exchange, inaugurated by India's Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi in January 2017. From 1993 till 2000, he set up India's national stock exchange primarily on technology, screen-based trading systems, satellite communications, network, equities and derivatives, businesses, and the Nifty index amongst his many responsibilities. He is considered the father of modern Indian financial derivatives due to his work at NSE. He received several Indian and international awards, including the Distinguished Alumnus Award from both his alma mater at IIT Bombay and IIM Kolkata, a rare achievement indeed. He has also been awarded the Digital Icon of the Year by the Indian Express Group and ranked amongst the top CEOs in the financial market by the Asian Banker. He's also among the top 50 CIOs in the world, information by Weekly US. He is a member of several committees of the government, regulators, and international associations. He is a member on the board of directors at the IIM Raipur, NIFM Faridabad, Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, member of the board of advisors at Shailesh J. Mehta School of Management, IIT Bombay, and has also served as the chairman of NIT Manipur. He is a distinguished visiting faculty at the Ryerson University in Toronto and the honorary professor at Nottingham University Business School. He has co-authored a book on the history of the Bombay Stock Exchange titled The Temple of Wealth Creation. We also have with us today Mr. Arun Kulkarni, chairman of the Legacies Group, and Mr. Suhas Tuljapurkar, the founder and director of the Legacies Group and the managing partner of Legacies Partners. I would now request Shri Ashish Kumar Chauhan to say a few words and inaugurate the platform, which is now open in Gracia for all SMEs. Sir, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting us here today. Compliance, part of a framework that is actually coming out in India as well as internationally. The compliance was not given that importance But with automation and record keeping happening, any non-compliance today may end up hurting us even after 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years. And that's why the compliance has suddenly become very important for, earlier it was only for the large companies. Now even small companies have to comply with every rules, regulations, GST, Companies Act, and literally everything that is now recorded and cannot be erased. It is not saying that I didn't know the law, that's why I did not comply. That excuse, I think, is gone. The other excuse that I was not caught, and now the onus of proof of my violation is on the accuser. That is also gone because accuser has all data of non-compliance. And so that's why it's important for every small little company, a large company also has to work on ensuring that the compliance happens well, and some database, some ways to figure out whether we are non-compliant or not in an activity is going to be very important going forward. So I congratulate Legasis and for launch of this Comply Global.
Thank you.
I'm sure my colleagues will also echo this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. If you can just give me the command to inaugurate, we can inaugurate and
yes,
quickly
please do that. Yeah, please do that. Please do that.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time. We would like to now invite Mr. Arun Kulkarni to say a few words, followed by Mr. Suhas Tuljapurkar.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Ashish sir, for kind of guiding us in terms of trying to bring in new technologies into this space. You see, one of the challenges that we have faced right from beginning when we talked about compliances, where one of the greatest challenge was the cost element of compliance, because in Indian context, the cost of compliance and the cost of non-compliance, when you trade it off, when the archaic laws said that the maximum fine that could be levied is 5,000 or 50,000, I think we've had tough time in trying to convince that why you should be in compliance, especially when we talked about SME sector. Sir, I still remember in our first or second meeting, you had said that technology is actually a driver which should bring down the cost elements. Sir, here we are, and thanks to Jaideep and Ishan and Team Legasis, what they have done, sir, they have actually reduced the cost of compliance through a subscription-based model, whereby a small and medium enterprise today can look at a very small price to be paid every month for making sure that they're compliant with all laws. And that's our commitment, that we've reduced the prices. I think thanks to, again, JD, Ishan, and the team that put together a subscription-based, a SaaS-based model, where probably one SME can expect to be in compliance with all laws by paying a subscription fee of about 25,000 per annum. It's gone down to that affordable level that we're driving the compliances, because what we have learned today is being used via a smart technology in bringing out these solutions. Sir, thank you very much. Thanks to Nehal Bhai. Thanks, Ajay Bhai. We need your blessings and support to make this happen correctly. Thank you very much.
Risha, over to you.
Thank you, Suhas sir. I request Arun sir to now say a few words.
I suspect Arun sir has connectivity issues.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Sure.
So Risha, may I request Mr. Nehal Vora, because he's been kind of instrumental in driving us on the technology front, to come out with better options, to say a few words, and especially in this space today of SME.
Sure, sir. So, Mr. Nehal, please kindly take the stage.
Thank you so much. I would first of all like to congratulate Legasis on this landmark seventh year running of the Compliance 10 by 10 Awards. It's a great, great landmark. I think it's Suhas and his team, Jaideep, Suhas, Ishan, all of them have been pioneers in celebrating compliance as a function, which is a very important function. Most of the businesses would tend to focus only on business side and not look at the regulatory side. Um I remember one very interesting anecdote which I'd read in the newspaper, that regulation is something which is only felt when you do not comply and you start facing the heat. Uh, uh, Interesting example was on the Bandra Worli Sea Link, which has technology driving regulation, where the speeding of the cars is driven by the cameras, which doesn't have a human element in it. And there was a very famous article that a car kept on speeding and ended up paying a significant amount, running into a multiple lakhs as fine, because it was recorded through the system. And I think this is an important paradigm shift which is happening, that up till now, human beings were driving and technology was the support. I think there is a paradigm shift happening with technology becoming the core and human beings becoming the support. That is giving rise to three important aspects, that with technology driving, it is basically timestamp, it is auditable, and it is objective. And lastly, technology doesn't need to go to sleep or does not need to go on vacation. So it ensures consistency of performance. It ensures that it's comparable, and therefore it brings in that power into people wanting to comply rather than having to comply. Because once you have the tool with you, and this is also an important shift, because regulators also now are depending more and more into technology in enforcing regulations rather than human beings being there. So there is a process of kind of a maker checker system, which also brings in the process of enforcement, bringing in a higher level of the integrity aspect. A famous quote by one of the prosecutors in US was, when somebody asked him that what's the use of compliance, because anyway most people do not get punished, and the retort was very famous, that try once being non-compliant and then you will see what it means to be compliant. So I think that is an important message. The second is the central government's focus on the SME sector, and BSC has been in the forefront of ensuring that the price discovery of such companies, they are able to gain cheap access to capital, plus they're getting the relevant valuation from markets, is an important mode, that regulation is considered to be an equal and important partner to ensure that this price valuation is fair, transparent, and honest. Because as I often say, that regulation and compliance is not a cost, it's an investment. And the more and more you invest into this, it's going to build your brand, it's going to bring honesty into your brand, and that's going to give you a higher valuation among your peers also, even though your revenues may be lower, because there is a certain honesty which is attached, which is an intangible asset, but very tangible in terms of valuation. So I think Legacies, I would really compliment Legacies and would urge them to foray further into artificial intelligence, foray further into making a more workflow-based solution, more than what they already have, so that you all become the pioneers in creating regulation technology as the key focus and the key ethos of running business successfully. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, everyone, and thank you to all our panelists. I think it's time for us to move on to our next session. which is a panel discussion on RegTech and risk mitigation, the new paradigm, with Mr. Nehal Vora, the MD and CEO of CDSL, Mr. Suhas Tuljapurkar, the Managing Partner of Legacy Partners and Founder Director of Legacy Services Private Limited, and Mr. Jaideep Kevalramani, CEO of Legacy Services Private Limited. Now, before we commence this discussion, I'd like to say a few words on Mr. Vora. Under his leadership, CDSL has become the leading depository with over 2 crore beneficiary accounts and is the first and only depository to launch its branch at the IFSC in Gandhinagar. In his earlier role as the Chief Regulatory Officer of the BSE Limited and the member of the executive leadership team, he drove regulatory excellence through membership, compliance, surveillance, inspection, investigation, regulatory communication, investor services, listing compliance, and regulatory legal teams. He began his career with SEBI in 1996, where he managed various functions, including the derivatives and new products department, and also implemented the T+2 rolling settlement for the Indian securities market. Mr. Vora has also headed the broking and investment banking compliance at DSP Merrill Lynch as the Director, Law and Compliance. He has been felicitated with awards such as NetApp Innovation Award 2019, Compliance Champion Award, IDC Digital Transformation Award, Best New Product in Asia for Market Surveillance, OGC Living the Mission Award, amongst many others, and has been recognized as a distinguished alumnus. He is also a lecturer at the National Institute of the Securities Market. I hand over the platform to you, sir.
Thank you. Kind introduction.
Thank you, Risha. Neilji, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Suhas, thank you very much. Let's dive into the conversation. I know we have a tight timeline over here, so let's make the best of it. We all know that RegTech solutions can mitigate risk while aiding regulatory compliance. Regulatory compliances are obviously continuously evolving. However, the non-compliance are hurting businesses and hitting them hard. We all know that technology helps improve the efficiency of compliance and data analytics. However, it is very important that banks and intermediaries must integrate business processes and data systems that feed into the RegTech platform. It can't operate in independent silos. RegTech is better positioned as a risk management tool than a monitoring tool. Your thoughts on this, Nehalji, first?
So I think that's a very important point which you've touched upon, Jaideep. I think it's extremely critical to ensure that the RegTech, the technology driving regulation is feeding into a system. The reason is threefold. First of all, I think for successful businesses and businesses which are run with a sustainable basis, really invest into a proactive regulation rather than a reactive regulation. And proactive, what I mean is that when the regulations are drafted, understand not only the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, and try to look 2 or 3 steps ahead of what the regulation is intending to achieve. Finally, there is a common objective, which is ensuring investor protection and to ensure market development as a key ethos on why the regulation is really driven, whether it be in the securities market or the banking market or in any other market. So with this in mind, if you kind of drive it to a proactive basis, what, the common, the very famous adage which happens in the industry or in management schools, that if I have 7 hours to cut a tree, I would spend 5 hours sharpening the axe. So I think proactive regulation is extremely critical to ensure that you are actually sharpening the axe to ensure that what all you need to build, because systems require time to build it. That's the first objective. The second one is that it creates a discipline that there is technology which is overseeing the supervision. So human beings can come and go, MDs can come and go, boards can come and go, but the organization is going to continue. So the sustainability angle for companies is that if they invest into technology-based solutions, it gives an institutional memory to the entire process, where I know what all I have done in the past, why I have done in the past, and if at all I face any enforcement actions or any legal actions, I have a very strong database of demonstrating my integrity, my intent in complying with the law. So that's the second most important. And the third most, and the most, I think the most critical, it even ensures good human behavior. Because when you know that technology is something which cannot be hoodwinked, if the system is kind of centralized, it's time stamped, the human beings cannot manipulate that system. It brings in that kind of an important check for human behavior, which translates into what I call as vitamin T, or trust. I think trust is what today drives, or the Lakshman Rekha between successful businesses and unsuccessful businesses. It's the trust factor which translates into a very strong and sustainable brand, a very strong and sustainable work culture, and a very strong and sustainable ethics in work, which kind of uh, is important to demonstrate the intent of doing business in a fair, proper, and transparent manner, which is going to have more and more people wanting to invest in that business. So your valuations are not only going to be high, you're going to have better people joining the organizations. You have an important employee culture, and last and not the least, you're going to enhance the shareholder value to a significant level, because the PE, or the price to earnings ratio of such companies, is generally higher than their peers, even if the earnings are identical. So this is kind of the X factor, which I call it, which enhances or gives that premium to the PE to the company.
Thank you. You touched upon an interesting concept called the Lakshman Rekha. We'll touch a little bit more on that later, but let's get Suhas's views on how does RegTech turn into a risk management solution rather than a monitoring tool. Your views, Suhas, please.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Jaideep, and thanks a lot, Nehal bhai. I think very interestingly, you touched upon three or four elements which predominantly talked about trust. And I think the T factor, the trust, becomes the most critical element. What we are experiencing, and I think very clearly when we started off Legacies way back in 2007-8, we didn't know at that point in time what RegTech was or what legal tech was. There were no suffixes. There was only one prefix that was there, which was actually to say that information technology. And we therefore looked at IT as the only factor. We also said that the fundamentally what is reusable can be converted into a very interesting proposition, and that's where we looked at legal tech emerging through the period. What my experience has been, and I think thanks to 2019, when I think the RBI came out with a regulatory sandbox approach to look at what's happening in the regulatory space insofar as BFSI sector is concerned. That regulatory sandbox approach has actually promoted a lot of fintechs and regtech companies to come forward and experiment with what otherwise was thought to be a very controlled domain of very few people to work around. So to that effect, a bit of socialization and democratization through the regulatory sandbox approach in 2019 is pivotal for all of us to look at. Having said that, there are JD. I think there is a lot of talk today about the technologies. You call insurance tech is becoming a super specialized technological area. Reg tech is different, legal tech is different. Having said all that, each of these spaces today talk about artificial intelligence straight away. While most of the people do not understand that AI is probably at the end of the paradigm. You need to travel a path right from machine learning onwards, or even prior to that, look at your service level architecture first. And when you do that, how are you making sure that your first step is right and the ethics are embodied there at your first step is becoming most critical element today. While I completely agree with Neil by that, yes, the enterprise value, the PE ratios are going to look differently for the companies that are embracing regtech or promoting innovation in the regtech space. But at the same time, I think if we do not seed the ethics at the beginning, and I think that while people talk about artificial intelligence, they don't realize that your data, it's your digit, which is 0 1, is the most critical element of what you're going to do next. And seeding that ethical principles at that digital space, which is 0 1 space, according to me, becomes the most important element of how you're going to build up going up to AI. Secondly, I think the last point that I would want to emphasize upon is that, uh, you see, very clearly, AI has to be based on big data, has to be based on various machine learning, data analytics, and various other elements that need to be put in place. If the AI does not help you in decision making, okay, the rest, everything else is actually your performance tools, uh, your productivity tools, your efficiency tools, but they're not in true sense your technology areas. So having talked to various of regtech companies which are startups, I think most of them are working towards how do you improve the effectiveness, how do we improve the efficiency, how do you improve the productivity, and those are being done through various kind of technology applications. But uh, move up to AI and help in decision making. So that's the top end of the pyramid, and you seed ethics at the beginning to make sure that your capture of data at the digit space is importantly done without any scope for anybody to fool around with the entire system or entire application that you're developing. I think that those are few of my thoughts. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you, Suhas. So, I think, Suhas, you also touched upon the ethics and the embodiment of all of that within the platform. And Nehal Bhai obviously spoke about the institutional memory and the Lakshman Rekha. Let's move into the softer aspects of this. Typically, in this sector, when you're looking at such a high speed environment, or let's say VUCA, a lot of velocity, uncertainty, complexity, and all of that going on, how easy or difficult is it? And what are your practical guidance tips on maintaining the so-called Lakshman Rekha or the ethics? Nehal Bhai, your views.
So I think this is an important aspect that it reminds me of the old Hindi Bollywood movies where the police would always come in the end when all the crime has been committed and completed. Uh, I think taking a cue from that, you know, your compliance solutions, your risk mitigation solutions should have, if not faster, at least an equal speed at which the business is being conducted. So the velocity aspect is something which has to match to ensure that the Lakshman Rekha is really the Lakshman Rekha and not imaginary Lakshman Rekha, which you believe is there but may not be there. That's number one. And there are umpteen examples to showcase that both in the Indian as well as the international forum, whether it be the financial crisis or which happened in 2008 or back home, a variety of frauds which have occurred. The key thread which runs through all of this is the lack of proper investment in systems to match the velocity of business so that it is able to catch or at least highlight any aberrations. I am not saying these are frauds, but any aberrations so that they can be acted upon. Whether there is a willingness or not is something which is a subjective matter of each company. but I think this is an important toolbox which is necessary. From the uncertainty angle, which you mentioned, is uh, you know really regulations are changing very rapidly, and a common complaint which I hear from a lot of key stakeholders is that before I can even complete my earlier regulation, there is a new regulation which is coming, which kind of changes my entire process and paradigm of working internally. And that's where uh, technology-based solution is extremely critical. And I know Legacy's solution has that it kind of immediately converts circulars into workflows and embeds it into the ecosystem of the business to ensure that there is no lag effect in terms of compliance. Why is that necessary? Because what one may perceive to be a kind of a very well run, compliant organization may sometimes be hit with some unintended consequences if it doesn't kind of keep pace with the pace of change of regulation. So once there is a pace, a velocity of the business, which is having its own challenges in terms of variables changing quickly, there is another velocity of the pace of change of the regulations, which is trying to keep pace with the business velocity. But that gains kind of has a tail wagging the dog kind of syndrome, where the business has to keep pace because they have to comply with these regulations, and therefore technology becomes very critical. And the third most important part is that companies, especially a lot of SEBI regulation or the banking regulation, are now placing a lot of personal liability on key stakeholders, be it the board or the key management personnel. Uh, so it is even from your personal safety, because for a professional, the only asset he has is his credibility, is the intangible assets of working in a honest manner, which is going to lead him to continued and sustainable success. So if I am going to be hit by some unintended consequences, which may be an issue at somebody lower down in the value chain, but the responsibility of it is going to stick personally, not at an institutional level, but personally at some of these key stakeholders. And therefore, that kind of brings into the supervisory technology, or subtech as it's called in the international forum. It's extremely critical to have a very robust subtech to ensure that there is enough and more than enough supervision done, that whether all the regulations, what are they intended for, are being complied in the manner and in the spirit which it is intended to, and it is done on a sustainable basis. And this can only happen if all of this is kind of built into a common ecosystem where the business gets embedded into a risk management tool which drives this process forward.
Thank you. So ask your views, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot, JD, and thank you, Nehal. I think I completely agree with Nehal Bhai in terms of whatever he has articulated. You see, RegTech today, and I'd just like to add on to it. You see, when we talk about Lakshman Rekha, okay, we are saying it's not a mythical line any longer. You see, therefore, while in Ramayana that was probably a mythical line drawn by Lakshman, today when it comes to regulatory behavior in terms of the people who are regulated, the regulatee as well as the regulator, it's such that there is no warning. Our Ashwin may have given warning to Aaron Finch and all the batsmen that hereafter, if you cross the line, I'm going to, run you out at the non-striker end. But there are no warnings in real life. You see, in real life, the moment you near that line, you need to know. And I think from the technology perspective, when we're talking about how do you look at this space in such an integrated manner that the R Ashwin warnings are given on Lakshman Rekha way far ahead of time for you to come near Lakshman Rekha. I think from that perspective, it's very interesting to look at RegTech and look at how do you set those lines, and those lines can't be set by one formula alone. I'll just give you one example, which is slightly different from BFSI sector. Is actually when we talk about pollution control regulator, and we all know as compliance professionals that the Sterlite example of 100 crore plus penalty and that Supreme Court had levied was actually at a micro level uh, for their failure to file their extension for consent well within time. That entitled them a deemed consent, deemed extension of the consent, was the micro level issue. Therefore, I think it's becoming more and more critical that you can't have one approach or one size fits all. You can't have approach where you say that I'm going to do it in one set of things that will apply to everybody in every regulatory requirement. You need to look at it at a micro level, give different treatment to different subsets, as kind of Nehalji talked about, in terms of those areas which are at a micro level. But if you do not have those micro levels controlled correctly while you are developing regulatory tech, I think you're going to falter there. You still have Lakshman Rekhas which would be missed. So it's an important element of technology when you talk about, and that's where I think at times we are struggling, because you see, you have to have not a SaaS-based approach to everything. You can't have a complete standardized approach to every aspect, and that's where I think the technologies are going to play a critical role. What an experiment that we've been doing and has been very successful till now is actually look at IoT as a technology which will integrate various devices, while their particular attributes of those devices may not change, but you are in an integrated manner still trying to make sure that there is no failure of completely integrated technology to provide you that Lakshman Rekha and make sure that you don't cross any line at any point in time. So I think there could be technology solutions around it, but my take is that you have to understand those micros correctly.
Sure, thank you. And we have little time left. We can always move this conversation to the speakers lounge where we can continue at leisure. But Suhas, before Nehal Bhai, quick closing comments, and if you can also touch upon the fact that there are a lot of choices out there. One statistic says that the whole RegTech industry is exploding and it will hit about some $23 billion by the end of 2023. How does a company actually make a pick of the right partner? Quick closing comments, and then we move to Nehal Bhai before the exciting launch that we have planned. Suhas.
Sorry, JD, I just missed you there. Can you please come back again?
Sure. Now, I was asking for closing comments, and if you could include the point that how do organizations choose the right partner, given that RegTechs are mushrooming and it's going to become a multi-billion-dollar industry by 2023. What are the 2 or 3 characteristics one should look at in a RegTech partner?
Yeah, thanks, JD. I think I would look at, go back to what Nehal Bhai said. Trust is the biggest factor today that will drive you towards correct partner. I think it's more than anything else. You need to have a partner that you can trust upon. I think that is the primary factor on which you will choose a partner. See, technology is an ability or a capability. Trust is a core strength. So if you can augment your capabilities, but you can't actually change your core. If you're not a trustworthy, you can never be trustworthy. You can't convert yourself to be trustworthy. But at the same time, If you have lacking in some technology capability, you can actually augment your capabilities and make sure that you're a good partner to be working with. That's my take, JD.
Thank you, Suhas. Nehal, your views, please, and closing comments.
Uh, so I think being around 23 years in the area of regulation, my key take in choosing any partner or any function, be it, and I completely agree with Suhas, is that trust is the core ethos which would drive it. But besides trust, I would also add that there has to be accountability, and that's an extremely important component to it is the second side of the coin, because trust will kind of add on to the accountability, and accountability will add on to the trust, because trust is not uh, uh, a mean or an end. It is kind of a work in progress, because your trust keeps on growing or falls depending on the environment. So it's kind of a yardstick to measure how much you want to give yourself up to. So I think that's an important thing, that accountability. So the partner which provides to you an unfettered accountability, a partner which provides to you tools which give you unfettered accountability of people who are doing the job at all levels, be it at the MD level or at the lowest most management training level, is an important characteristic with which you should be deciding a tool. And the last, just before I end off, is besides all of this, is also the humane aspect of a partner. You know, commercial considerations is something which we all do business for, but there is something called a humane aspect which gives that extra mile, where the uh, uh, the EQ, as we call it in human relationships, is a very important aspect when you are choosing a partner, because there are times when you are going to be faced with troubles which are beyond the framework which has been put in place. So how quickly that partner is going to be able to ensure that that partner doesn't leave a sinking ship. That personality is an important personality when you're choosing a partner, like you're choosing a partner for yourself for life, is something is on a similar lines which you would, because this is something which is going to go on for many years. So I think those were really my closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nehal and Suhas. It was a great conversation. We literally have 2 minutes and we have an important matter to attend to. Nehal, we would request you to please launch our latest course in data protection and privacy law. It's an advanced program. Risha, request you to pull up the screen. Nehal, by on your command, we'll launch the course.
So you could go ahead and launch it. Wishing you all the very best and all the success for the new product.
Thank you, sir. I think that brings us to an end, to the end of today's session. Thank you, Mr. Vora, for being here with us today. Thank you, Mr. Tuljapurkar. Thank you, Mr. Keval Ramani. And congratulations to everyone. Thank you, everyone else, also for joining us today. We will now be moving on to our next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.